back to episode 12 of the Double Down podcast presented by WaterWave. Today is Friday, December 9th, and I'm excited to join you guys via Zoom today because our guest is currently in Illinois. So I'm going to be on Zoom with you guys, tapping with you guys on Zoom. It's definitely different than the in-person interviews, but I like it just the same. It's a great way for me to, bring guests from across the country, guys that I, guys and gals that I probably couldn't talk to if it wasn't for Zoom. So we're going to get into this interview, but first we want to start with the weekly wrap up. A segment that we're gonna stick with. We're gonna just wrap up my week, wrap up kind of events that happened in my week. So when it comes to my week, you have to include Gopher basketball. We are in a little bit of a little slump right now. We've lost the last couple games, but I'm proud of the way that our guys have battled. Proud of the way that our young freshmen are continuing to step up, continuing to learn, continuing, to run to some of us, our veterans, to be coached, and they want to get better. So, that's what's important. We were at Purdue on Sunday, and man, that's a good squad. So credit to them. But that's the level we want to get to. That's the level we want to be at. That's the kind of team that we want to, be able to compete with. Big 7'4", 7'5", 290 pounds. Zach Edey is a monster. So credit to him, but credit to the way that team plays, and they're really well coached. And that's a level that, we plan on getting to, and we're excited to get to that level. As you guys know, we pre-record episodes. So yeah, we played Michigan yesterday, which would actually be tomorrow because I'm recording on a Wednesday. So we'll have updates on that game next episode, but that'll be a good game as well. They got a big skilled big man as well in Hunter Dickinson, really good guard, and Jet Howard, and we're just excited for that one. It'll be a good matchup in the barn at home. So hopefully you guys came to that one. Hopefully you checked us out. My Vikings are one of the best teams in the league. We play the Lions this weekend, so I'm excited about that one. That's to clinch the division, the NFC North. So you got to mention my Vikes, and I got to mention my Timberwolves as well. Just slowly moving along. Karl Anthony Towns got hurt, but they're continuing to improve. They're playing good basketball right now. And lastly, my knee. I've been doing all right. It's about 5.5 months now. Just staying steady with my rehab with PT. I had mentioned to somebody about, just the travel schedule, being in California, going to Virginia, going to Purdue. It's been a lot. It's been a lot of flights. It's been a lot of bus rides. And I've had a lot of, inflammation and stuff in my knee, but it'll be nice to be home for the whole month of December and the early parts of January. Just being able to continue to rehab. Like I mentioned before, I've been running a little bit. So this process and this process includes a lot of healing too, a lot of recovery. And it's easier to do that when you're at home. So yeah, it's all positive vibes. I'm continuing to learn. I'm continuing to, just get better and get healthier. And I'm excited for you guys to stay with me on the updates. So that's all I got for this week's Double Down weekly wrap up. Stick with it here. Stay with us because we are going to go into our featured interview. And it's definitely one that you're not going to want to miss. We have a special guest on the pod all the way from Illinois, and we're excited to welcome him on the pod, and I'm excited for you guys to hear his story. So with that being said, stick with us here as we're going to jump into the featured interview. Welcome back to our featured interview. I'm excited to welcome on a guest that is the testimony of perseverance. The Chicago, Illinois native has spent his last 8 years in Dekalb, Illinois, playing football for Northern Illinois University. And he has a very unique college experience in terms of football that I'm excited for y'all to hear. A new friend of the podcast, Kyle Pugh. Kyle, excited to have you on, bro.
And thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Let's start back. Let's bring it back. Mentioned growing up in Chicago, being from Illinois. Were sports kind of a big part of your life growing up? Is that something that you kind of found your identity in early, or was it a kind of some other things?
Yeah, no doubt. Sports has pretty much been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. Both of my older brothers played. My little sister played. My folks were athletes, so it was like a thing in our house. Obviously school first, but everybody played sports. And I took a liking to football really early. I played basketball and baseball, but football was always my favorite.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think it's so unique, especially having, brothers and sisters and people that are playing sports with you. It helps you push yourself, because,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we've talked about on the podcast, just about the level of competition that us athletes have, and it's like you gotta have that competition from somewhere. And I bet you could probably credit that to your siblings and your parents as well.
Oh yeah, no doubt. There's my oldest brother is 8 years older than me, and then my second oldest is 6. So if I wanted to be involved in anything that they were doing, I had to keep up, and being able to compete and hold my own. So that was just built in,
Yeah, you got to grow up fast because they're
right?
not going to take it lightly on you. That's for sure.
No,
That's
no
for
doubt.
sure. So, you decide, football is kind of for you. Is there a time that you kind of realized that? Was it into high school when you're having a little bit more success, or when did you know that football you want to make a career, out of this sport?
Yeah. Well, growing up in the Chicagoland area, I like to say we kind of all have hoop dreams.
Yeah.
But I kind of stopped growing vertical and start growing horizontal, if you
Okay.
will. So football is kind of like it was just a better fit for me.
Hmm.
Um, so there's always going to be love for basketball, but football was just it made more sense for me. I got a lot more um, attention, from schools and different things like that. So it was probably my sophomore year of high school, I would say, that I really started to take football like as my priority.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, I think it was kind of the same thing for me. Playing football, playing basketball. Obviously basketballs were always my dreams, but I love football as well. So
Yeah.
it's hard to make that decision. You talk about sophomore year, you kind of make that decision for yourself. Is that when you kind of knew you want to play college football, or was that kind of like you just want to focus on football? How did that process go for you when you kind of made that decision? Like, hey, I want to go D1. I want to play college football. I want to start getting recruited. How did that kind of, process go about?
Um, that's kind of always been a dream of mine.
Hmm.
Growing up, obviously I watched NFL football, but I was always, a big fan of college football.
Yeah,
Big stories like Reggie Bush and Vince Young playing in the national championship. Those are like days that I would live for. So college football was always like a big deal for me. I wanted to, go and play. And that played a part in my decision to go to NIU. I wanted to go somewhere where, obviously I would have a chance, to grow, develop, and play, early. But also, I wanted to be able to go to those big stadiums and play some of those big teams and get that
hmm
experience as well.
yeah, and such an awesome conference too. The MAC is such a great football conference, and
Yeah.
I think it allows you to travel to a lot of cool places, see a lot of
Mhm.
cool stadiums, and for yourself an opportunity to play really high quality, football. So definitely exciting. We're working on a little construction, so if you guys hear anything in the background, it's a little construction in the studio. I'm trying to keep the mic as quiet as I can, but going picking NIU, going into your freshman year, you redshirted. What were your expectations coming into college football, coming into NIU, just in general? Like, how did you feel about the college experience, and how did you feel about like your opportunity to go out there on the field and play?
Yeah. Coming in as a freshman, I was naive. I thought I was gonna, be a freshman starter and come in and make an impact on the program right away.
Yeah,
Then you get to campus and you realize that these are grown men.
for sure.
A lot of guys they've been training at this level with this game speed for a couple of years now, and so it was a humbling experience. Got there and I needed to gain weight. I needed to attack the weight room better. I had no idea how to study a playbook. So there was some growing up that I needed to be done. I think redshirting was probably one of the better decisions that I made in my career.
Yeah, I mean, I was the guy that redshirted myself my first year, which allowed me for my possible eighth year as well, and we'll get into that whole thing. But
Mhm.
I think it's such a unique perspective, and I think there's a level of self evaluation that goes into it as well. That realization coming in, like, hey, these dudes aren't scrubs. Like, I'm not coming. Like, I'm good. Don't get me wrong. Like,
Yeah,
I'm nice, but I'm not coming into a program that's like with scrubs. Like there's
Yeah.
some dudes out there,
Yeah.
kind of take us through how did that kind of affect like your mental, because I think you can have two responses to that. You can be like, oh, these guys are good, I'm never going to get to their level, why try? Or like, hey, this is where I want to get, let's work.
Mhm.
How obviously you picked the second one. How did
Yeah.
that process go about for you?
Um, well, as a redshirt freshman,
Mm-hmm.
my mentality was
Long
pretty
time
much,
ago. Long time ago.
yeah, right. Yeah. I pretty much, once I decided that I was gonna be a redshirt, I decided to just make the most of the year.
Mhm.
I was going to be on the scout team during practice. We were going to have Devo lifts, and just it was going to be a developmental year for me. And I understood that. I had confidence in myself, so that eventually I would see the field. So I would just take this year to, kind of just get a little ahead of the game in a sense. Um, one thing that my older brother told me, he always said, redshirting is like, if you can think back to your senior year of high school,
Yeah.
um, if you had another year after your senior year, how much more productive would you have been?
Wow. Yeah.
With everything that you were able to learn a year after has high school and different things like that, just another step faster, another year more mature. So I kind of had a different perspective on my red shirt. After that conversation, and I just attacked the weight room, and I was the best teammate that I could be, and it kind of like shaped my mentality moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I mentioned to people, it's an opportunity to grow. It's an
Yeah,
opportunity to realize and learn more about yourself and learn more like where you want to get. Because all of
hmm
us have goals. Obviously you have probably had a goal of going to the NFL coming into your freshman year of college, and it's like how do you get there, and how do
yeah,
you learn from the leadership of those involved. Moving on, you go into your sophomore year, and you kind of are, shaped in that kind of, backup little middle linebacker role, playing a hefty amount. You played in 10 games. Take us through that year. How did that, how did that year go? You stayed healthy for that year. You're getting an opportunity to go play out in the field as a redshirt freshman, which is, a lot of people don't realize that a lot of guys still don't get to do that, So how did
yeah.
that year go for you as a player?
That year I was a four-course special teams guy, so I played all special teams. I think I got in one game at linebacker. Had no idea what I was doing still. So that was another year just to grow up, and it kind of makes you appreciate every snap. You
Yeah.
know, you it, it's hard to play Division I football.
Yeah.
So going out there, special teams, just having some type of impact on the game in some
Mhm.
way it was a privilege, and it was just another humbling experience for me.
Yeah, trying to make plays, trying to help your team win. I mean, I can't credit the same experience, but I play the game, and I'm on the
Mhm.
game at NCAA 14. It's frustrating when you're not even on the game and you're on
Yeah,
special teams at NCAA. So I could assure it's pretty frustrating real life
yeah,
for sure.
no
But I
doubt.
mean, you finish that year up, and you head into what is your redshirt sophomore year. And you had a great start to the year. You made 35 tackles in 4 games. You're the starting middle linebacker to open up the year. You actually had 17 tackles against Boston College, which is just an insane number.
Mhm.
And I think you picked off a pass in that game as well.
Yep.
Yeah, so just a great start to your year. Kind of take us through before we kind of get to the second half of the year. Take us through the beginning part. How are you feeling as a player? How are you feeling as a dude? Obviously, you're having a lot of success. How did that kind of just that starting of that year go for you, and how are you feeling? How, like, you riding that high? Is that kind of something that
Yeah.
you're experiencing?
Yeah, it was a high for sure. After sitting for 2 years and kind of just, playing my role,
Hmm.
being a good teammate, it kind of felt like it was finally my time to,
Yeah.
be the guy. And then to get the season started off the way that it was, it was just confirmation that, I needed those years to develop and everything, but I still got it. I can, I'm still that impactful player that I was in high school, and I deserve to be here.
Yeah, no, it's that feeling of like, hey, I earned this. Like I
Mhm.
put in I put in that time, and nobody knows how much work you did except for yourself. And
Yeah.
that's what makes it so special too, especially when you're able to have success. I think I kind of went through the same process where, my redshirt freshman year was fine. I played all right. Then, I kind of had a really good, redshirt junior year, and it's like, hey, you earned this stuff. Like this,
Mhm.
this wasn't handed to you. This is something that you went about and you earned. Um, and you get to the San Diego State game. You're playing probably, like we mentioned, the best football of your career. You're probably as strong as you ever felt. Going into to the fourth quarter, you come down with an injury in your
Mhm.
bicep. Take us through, just the initial emotional response. Did you know it was a bad injury right away? How did that affect you mentally, on the field in front of 30,000 people?
Yeah. So I tore my bicep tendon at the distal end, so towards the elbow. Just on a routine tackle, I reached out. My forearm kind of struck a guy's leg, and it hyperextended my elbow, and it felt like a rubber band pop. But I didn't know what I did. I just knew something happened. So obviously, I think that happened in the end of the third quarter. I played the fourth quarter, did what I could. I was out there with one arm. So, towards the end of the game, I kind of knew that something was up. I didn't know what it was. And then as I kind of like jogged off the field for obviously the conclusion of the game, the trainers on the sideline kind of could already see what it was because my bicep had like retracted up into my shoulder. Yeah, so obviously in the locker room after the game, they kind of told me that what the deal was. It was one of those things where you kind of need like immediate surgery before you lose like the function in your hand and stuff like that. So it was, man, to go through those 2 years of development, and then to finally get my time, to be the guy, and then to have a season that I was having, the projection that I was on, and then for it to be shut down. It was crazy. I had no idea. I had no experience on how to handle that situation. Uh, so many emotions, disappointment. It was a crazy experience for me.
Yeah, you talk about the different emotions that overflow you, and obviously you haven't been through something like this, that you haven't had a doctor look at you and say, hey, you're going to be out for the year, you need
Mhm.
season-ending surgery. You haven't been through sitting out of football. You've always you've always been a part of football. How did you initially kind of rationalize that process that was going through? Like, was it like, hey, let's get surgery, let's go, or was it like, man, I just need some time to myself, or do I need to reach with friends? How did you kind of get through that initial sense of just a detriment to your mental health?
Yeah. I think it started with denial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Obviously, they were all looking at it from an outside perspective. No scans or anything like that. So I kind of still had some type of hope that they were wrong, and maybe it just looked worse than it was. Um, so the reality of the situation didn't really hit me until after I got the scans and everything, the imaging done, and um, then it's real. Then it's real. Then you have to schedule the surgery, and um, man, it's something that it's hard to explain.
Yeah. No,
It's hard to explain.
we've talked about it with guests on the pod a lot. It's like this feeling that you don't know until you kind of go through it, and
Yeah.
it's almost like an unexplainable feeling too, because it's like
Mhm.
there's so many different emotions that flow over you, and there's so many different things that, like, you don't know how to compartmentalize. Like, you don't know how to think about them. Like, you're supposed to be out there next week playing football. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like I can't have surgery. I gotta be ready for next week. And, like, you know what I'm saying?
100%.
So
Yeah.
it's such a process that, like, you don't really know until you go through. But you go through it. You get a surgery. You go through that process. Take us through the kind of those dog days of surgery. Being away from the team. Having to go through the early days of rehab, which suck, which is the worst part.
Yeah.
How did you work on your mental health, and then kind of keep just your head focused, your head in the game?
Yeah. Um, Man, I wish I had the knowledge that I have now
Yeah.
then.
Hmm.
Obviously it was my first surgery, and if anyone knows anything about my story, it wasn't my last. So it got progressively better the more I became experienced with it. But that first one, I had no reference, for what I should be feeling, how things are supposed to go. And so, you know, um, obviously coming home from the hospital, you're all doped up on painkillers and everything. And,
Hmm.
it's still, it's real, but it's not real. And then you get the stitches out, and it's time to start rehab, and you go to, move your hand, and it's not doing what it's supposed to do. And there no that's one of those things where it's like, no matter what anybody tells you, you're not going to be ready for that part. The mental part of like, man, I am so far from where I was,
Hmm.
and it's going to take so much work just to get back to where I was at.
Yeah, it's that first like holy shit kind of moment.
Yeah.
Like, bro, you got to be kidding. Like, I'm even, I'm going through my second one right now, my second ACL, and it's like even 5 months, it's like, dude, I'm so far for where I want to be,
Hmm.
and it sucks. But it's like, you just gotta you gotta find out a way to embrace the suck, and you gotta find out
Absolutely.
a way to, just push through those dog days. And it's something that you did. You come back next year, you're named to second team All MAC middle linebacker. You ranked second on the team in tackles with 106 tackles. Playing through pretty much an injury the whole year as well. You tallied 8 or more stops in 8 games, which had at least 6 in every game you played. You're just playing really, really good football. You came back and from this bicep injury, and something that it's not easy to do, and you play through this year with a shoulder injury, right? Is that correct?
Hmm.
This 2018 year. Um,
Hmm.
Take us through that year playing. When did that kind of injury happen? How did you play through it? Were the docs telling you like, hey, this could get worse or this couldn't get worse? Take us through that 2018 year, as you are your second team All MAC middle linebacker.
Yeah. um 2018. So I went through a full year of rehab for my bicep, and
Yep.
I was completely fine. Obviously had to wear a brace on my arm, but I was good. I finally made it through the mental battles and everything. I built my confidence back up. So I was ready to go for the 2018 season. I believe we opened with Iowa, um, and we competed for a while. I think they pulled away from us at the end of the third. But going into the let me see, going into the third, I want to say I went in for, a routine tackle with an outstretched arm. Guy kind of slipped out of it, and I think my shoulder like sublexed. So it wasn't a full dislocation yet, but I knew something was up. It was a little loose in there, and so made it through that game. Was a little sore afterwards, but I didn't think much of it. And the following game, I can't recall exactly who we played the following game, but I think for the next 4 games, my shoulder dislocated 6 times. And it was an experience in itself. But it just go for big hits or routine tackles, and it would slip out. I would lay on the ground until the trainers got there.
Yep.
They would pop it back in. I come out for a series, and then I go back in. Um, and that's kind of just something that I dealt with for the remainder of that season. It got better as the season went on, with rehab and everything like that. But obviously, I had to get surgery after that season.
Yeah, that second game you actually played against Utah, another pretty good team as well.
Remember that?
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean, kind of take us through that. And I don't think this is something that people get unless they've gone through your initial injury, the bicep injury.
Mhm.
You get knocked down, you're in pain, your shoulder's out of place, something's wrong, but you just continue to get up and push through and continue to pop it out of place.
Yeah.
Is that something that you would kind of credit like being hurt prior to and being like, oh, I can't take this for granted. Like I can, like, if my shoulder's out, I can still play. Is that kind of an attitude that you had?
100%.
Yeah.
Sitting out for that biceps injury, it was a 8 to 12 week or 8 to 12 month process.
Hmm.
You know, and it was I had already sat for 2 years with the red shirt,
Yeah.
and then playing special teams. Got off to an amazing start for the first 4 games of 2017, and then was sat down. So in my mind, I'm like, man, there's no way they would have to really like be carrying me off the field if I ain't gonna play.
No
So
doubt.
every time my shoulder popped out. It was one of those things where it's like, man, this hurts. It feels funny, but if I can still go, I'm gonna go because I know what it feels like to not get any, not be on that sideline for the whole season. I'm not doing that again.
Yeah. No.
So it was definitely like one of those things where it's like it could be worse.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a unique perspective to have. And I think, without that bicep injury, it's probably pretty hard for you to have that perspective. And I think it's hard for even the listeners to understand that perspective as well. Cause it's like, y'all don't know how hurt he probably was, like how bad that hurt every time, but it's like the hurt of being on the sideline and not doing what you love hurts more than, the injury itself. Is that something that you'd agree with?
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and it's I just am looking at my notes here, and I'm dumbfounded by the way that you were able to, go out and play with this injury. To credit, you had 7 stops against BYU and Eastern Michigan. You made 10 tackles against Ball State. You just have a great year, and then you go into that off season year. Is that something where you and your trainers talked about surgery? Is that something? How did the conversation go after the year about your surgery? What was the next step for you, as an athlete out there on the field?
hmm so obviously got that shoulder surgery, and
Hmm.
now this is my second surgery in 2 years.
Yeah.
And so my approach to the next season, by ordinance of the coaches, was a little different.
Yeah.
I was really held out of most contact for most of the off season. Really just working on conditioning and strength. A lot of rehab probably twice a day for most of that off season, and that was more so my focus. They had already seen that I could be productive at this level. I had a really good understanding of the playbook at this point, so we didn't really get much out of me doing something silly at practice or different things like that. So um, my time kind of changed in that way, where practice wasn't really for me at that point. They were more so worried about keeping me healthy and getting me to game day. So I had to attack it, find other ways to keep that competitive edge, kind of on my own, where, drills on my own, individuals, rehab, extra rehab, just different things like that. But that was the first year where it was like a different type of approach.
Yeah, it's kind of the similar approach that I'm going through right now too, with the second ACL. And it's a different approach that your athletic trainers probably take as well. They're a little bit more
Mhm.
cautious, a little less contact, a little more, rehab versus, going and hitting somebody. How did you continue to, just work on your competitive nature? Because we've talked about on the podcast so much about how we as athletes are so competitive in what we do, and when you're taken out of a sport, it affects your mind. You want to go out
Yeah.
there and you want to go out there and compete. As a football player, as a linebacker, you probably want to go out there and hit somebody. It's the one place in the world where you can just legally, hit somebody as hard as you can.
Mhm.
How did you kind of, keep that, your mental health up, but also like keep that competitive spirit and your juices flowing when it comes to that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I, to be honest with you, I think the only thing that allowed me to keep that competitive edge was understanding that, it was a privilege for me to be out there.
Yeah.
I had such an understanding of what it was like for the game to be taken away from me
Hmm.
that there was no way I was gonna, have the opportunity to be back out there and not leave everything on the field.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, I get hurt again, and that's something I've already overcome. So it was not a fear for me anymore. So I would go out there with no regard for my body, because worst things worst thing that could happen, in my mind was that, I have to start all over again, and I wasn't afraid of that anymore. So it was just like a fearless mentality, something, I was playing the football that I loved as a kid. It was still the same game to me. I never lost a love for it.
Yeah.
My body seemed to disagree at some points, but it was one of those things where it was like, man, I'm going to be out there anyway, so I might as well, you know, play fearless.
Yeah, you talk about that fearless mindset, and those of you that are watching the YouTube version of this podcast, you have a sweatshirt on here. It says "free of fear." Is that what it says
Yep.
there?
Yep.
Is that kind of the mindset you're talking about? Just
Yeah. No doubt.
just doing what you love and not being
Yeah.
afraid of what comes.
Yeah. My childhood friends. He's got a clothing line. It's called Free of Fear, and I definitely bought into it. I support it very much because it's something that I live by.
Yeah.
Just understanding that fear is probably the biggest opponent that we face in
Mhm.
general.
Yeah.
It's something that never leaves us. It's always in our mind. It's that voice that tells you you can't.
Yeah.
So it's something that we battle with every day. And if you can dominate that battle, the sky's the limit for whatever you're pursuing.
Yeah, I had a guest on, early in the podcast. We kind of talked about fear, and fear can come in, so many ways. You can be afraid of injury, you can be afraid of failure, you can even be afraid of success. But
Hmm.
once you're kind of able to, wipe that fear out and just go be free and go be yourself, I think that's when you're, finally able to just like find that love that love that you had in high school, that love that you had, growing up playing football. I think it's such a unique perspective. You go through that shoulder surgery, and you come back for the 2019 season. You started in the first two games of the season at linebacker, before it gave up on you again. It didn't want to agree with you. You made 5 tackles. You had 1.5 tackles for loss. You would probably say that you're playing pretty good football again. And then you obviously got the shoulder fixed. And then 2 games into the 2019 season, you kind of re-injured the same shoulder. Take us through the injury. Take us through what you're thinking on the field. Where your head's going, because I'm sure you're battling. You're battling demons a little bit. You're
Yeah,
battling that. This is like, why me? Why does this keep happening to me? Take us kind of through that initial emotional response of that second shoulder surgery, your second shoulder
yeah.
injury.
So this one is a little tough for me because this is the first one that I've kind of felt responsible for.
Yeah.
I went through the off season wearing my shoulder brace, my harness or whatever to keep it kind of all stable in there. And, the season hits and for whatever reason, I felt as though I moved better without it. Even though coach told me to keep it on, I took it off. And then 2 games into the season, I fractured my shoulder socket. Yeah. And so that was one of those things where it's like, man, if I would have probably just, worn my harness and listened to coach, this is one of those things I probably could have protected myself from. So that was a different mental approach. And just knowing that, uh, there's just regardless of how I feel or whatever the case may be, because of my injury history, there's just some things that'll have to change moving forward if I want to continue to play. I have to continue to protect myself regardless of how I feel or what feels most comfortable. There's wearing a brace or different things like that. It might not look the coolest, but it's cooler than being on the sideline.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I mean, you also talk about that this one's different because you weren't able to play through it. You had to stop. You had to cut the season short. Um and obviously it's tough, especially when from where you came from, getting better and being back on the field. It's tough to, kind of end the season. And then you obviously don't play in the rest of that year, and you go into the 2020 year, which would have been the COVID year. So you guys only played in 6 games. You appeared in 5 of them. How did you take us kind of through before we get to the 2021 season? Just that COVID year, how you felt as a player, being on the field again after 3 injuries. Kind of just take us through that shortened year.
Yeah. So I honestly going into that year, we had no idea if we were going to play or not. Um, the conference had shut us down, and I think a couple teams kind of not boycotted, but they just suggested that we have a shortened season, just conference. 6 games, starting in November, I believe, or
Okay.
October.
Yeah.
Um, so it was a roller coaster leading up to the season, but obviously I was out there again. I was healthy, no injuries, and my mental was good.
Yeah.
So it was just good to be back out there. I played 5 out of 6, and I think the ones that I didn't was because targeting call.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
You
made
took
it
you,
through that season.
you
Yeah,
took that
pretty
injury.
healthy.
You took that injury aggressiveness out on somebody a little too
Right.
hard on that one. I
No
can't
doubt.
blame you for that one, brother. I can't
Yeah.
blame you for that
Yeah.
one. You want to
Yeah.
be out there hitting people again.
Hmm.
You go through that year, just an opportunity, like you said, just to be back on the field, just playing the sport you love, probably just being out there fearless, just being yourself, I would imagine. And then you get to the 2021 year, what was supposed to be your senior year, or no, your junior year, right?
Senior.
2020,
Yeah.
2021.
Well, 2021. It would have been my senior year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And you record 55 tackles. Um, is that right? 55 tackles that year?
2021.
Yeah. That's what I have in my notes. I could be
No,
wrong.
2021. I didn't play at all.
You didn't play it. Yeah, because the 2020 season is the year that you had 55 tackles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
that
Yep.
year. So then you end that year and you go into spring practice,
Hmm.
and you did the knee.
Yeah.
Kind of take us through that process and tearing the ACL. We've had a lot of ACL tears on the podcast. Probably, on a non-contact play. Take us through that. Share the guests. That kind of the story that transpired there.
Yeah. So I take the first one, the shoulder, the second shoulder, I take upon myself,
Hmm.
and then the ACL coach takes upon himself.
Yeah.
It was the last practice of spring ball, so
Wow.
we go through 15 practices in the spring. It was practice 15. It's scripted, and I was done. I had got my plays in. I was on a pitch count. I had maybe one or two plays that I could have gotten, and so I went. I was going in for individuals. We were doing one on ones with the running backs. But I was supposed to be done with practice.
Yeah.
Um, just went out there on a non-contact and tore my ACL.
Man.
So coach takes that one. He says he should have pulled me earlier. But that's nobody would have known that. Nobody, you can't
Yeah.
predict that. So, but yeah, just hitting that ground and going to get up and just knowing that like something ain't right.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
it was weird.
Yeah, and I'm sure you almost kind of knew too right away. Like you maybe didn't know
Mhm.
what the injury was, but you're like, yeah, this is another injury. This
Yeah.
is something I'm gonna have to deal with. Where did your mental go right away with that? Like just knowing like this, I could be out for a while again.
Yeah.
Where does your head go?
Immediately in that moment, my head goes to, damn, not again.
Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
Uh, laying there waiting for the trainers to make it to me. And I'm just, you know, like, man, I don't know if I could do this again,
Hmm.
you know. But this time, I think again, I have to attribute to the experiences that I had previously. It didn't linger very long.
Yeah.
I kind of had an idea of what the next couple months were going to look like for me after surgery and different things like that. So, um, I kind of it was what it was. I was in the moment. I allowed myself to be in that moment, and then it was just kind of like, all right, let's get back to work after that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's such a unique thing because so many people would give up. So many people would just be done. Why do you keep playing football, bro? Like why? What is it in your mind or in? I probably cut it to the heart a little bit more than the mind. Like why do
Mhm.
you want to keep playing football? Like after this one, you've been through bicep tear, you've been through two shoulder injuries, now you tore your ACL. Like so many people would be done. I even told myself if I tore my ACL again, I'd be done, and I'm not because I love
Yeah,
it too much. Is that something you feel the same? It's just too
yeah.
much love.
I've definitely had that talk with myself before. Like
Yeah.
prior to the ACL, I was like, man, if I get hurt again, I'm just gonna hang it up.
Yeah.
Um, I think honestly, to me, the one thing that has always fueled me and kept me, battling back through injury is the spurts of like high level play that I've
Yeah.
had.
Yeah.
Where it's like a cliffhanger for me, to where it's like I work up, to the season, I get off to a really good start, and then I get hurt, and it's like, man, I could give up, but there was a lot of potential there. Like,
Hmm.
I still got it. I could still play at a high level.
Yeah.
If I could just stay healthy 1 year, that hope for just, man, what could I do in a year if I stayed healthy? Kind of
Yeah.
always kept me battling back.
It's such a beautiful thing too. I see it in my own self. I'll watch like a clip back and I'm sure you do the same. You hop on film and like, damn, I made that
Yeah,
play. Like,
yeah,
come on, bro. I could
yeah.
be so nice. If I stay healthy, I could be so
Mm,
nice. And you go through the ACL rehab, you go through the whole process. And then you come back this year. And you're able to play in your 8th season of college football, which, I think your coach mentioned you're probably one of the only players in the country that has done that.
mhm.
You have 19 solo tackles, 36 assisted tackles. Kind of just briefly as we continue to wrap up here the pod, just take us through this year and just what it's meant for you just to be out there with your guys, doing it for your coaches, but at the end of the day, like, doing it for yourself too. What was it like just being out there as a football player?
Yeah. Man, it's a blessing. 8 years, been through several coaching staffs. Um, obviously I've come over a lot of adverse situations, but to conclude the season, finally make it through a season healthy.
Yeah.
I was disconnected from, stats or anything like that. I wanted to be a good teammate. I wanted to play football and have fun, and stay healthy. And I was able to do that. So it was kind of like, I was able to close that chapter of my book, on my own terms. Injuries didn't finish my story.
Yeah.
I was able to battle back and go out the way that I wanted to.
Hmm.
And then, obviously coming back from an ACL, you don't really know what to expect or, how things are going to look, moving forward. But, as the season progressed, I kind of started to feel that same impact,
Yeah.
on the game that I used to. And so, that hope for, being that elite level player, returned. And, as the season went on, we obviously didn't have a winning season. We had some injuries in other positions that were kind of detriment to the season, and so we had to start developing younger guys and looking forward to the next season.
Yeah.
Which, as an 8th year senior, you have to understand.
For
Your
sure.
time was up 4 years ago. So I just invested in the young guys, and kind of became like a big brother in that sense. But I tried to impact the game when I could, and it was just a blessing, man. I'm
Yeah.
100% appreciative of the opportunity, and I'm just excited to see what comes next.
No, that's awesome, bro. Really appreciate you being on the pod. Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing your story. I think it's a testament to perseverance and just finding what you love and sticking with it through thick and thin. So, bro, we appreciate you being on the podcast. You'll forever be a friend of the Double Down podcast. So we appreciate you, bro. I'm gonna send you some merch. But with that being said, it's been your boy Parker Fox of the Double Down podcast, and I'm signing off. I'll see you guys next week.
yeah.